what I've come to learn in 26 years of doing this work is that there's three elements that really define if a thing can survive spiritually in a community. One is, what does the land want? Mm-hmm. What do the people want? And what does the spirit want? And if you can address those three things, then you'll have something. But if those three things aren't solidified and they're not taken into consideration and they're not acted upon, then nothing gets to exist.
I'm Colleen Akiko, host of We Be the Change. I recorded today's episode on January 1st of 2026. My husband, Chris, and I were beside a ceremonial fire talking with tribal leader Brian "BB" Melendez on the Hungry Valley Reservation. Brian is a Northern Paiute, Southern Paiute, and Western Shoshone community leader based in Reno, Nevada. He allowed me to record this on my phone, so you'll hear fire crackles and various people in the background, and you'll also hear Brian describe what he calls the third kind of sacred space, and how it emerges when people commit themselves to the land, to one another, and to the stories that shape them. You may also hear how he describes leadership in patiently removing the obstacles so something could grow and have a long-term impact. So join us now with others by the fire.
There are places in the world, right, that exist that people in all walks of life would agree that something is sacred, right? Mecca, Medina, Grand Canyon, the pyramids,
Sedona.
like the Sedona, like whatever it is, right? They look at a thing and say, hey, there's this sacred space, and we all agree. When you walk by it, you see it, you can feel it, you have a name for it, there's like a story, there's like an understanding of this sacred space. That's the first type of sacred space. The second type of sacred space that Vine Deloria is talking about is when you go to another type of sacred space and you're like, oh, well, there's this mountain, there's this place, it has a story, has a name, not as like well known into the world, but it's enough where we kind of like look at it, you feel it, you're like, okay, I could see this, I could feel this, I could recognize it. The people knew there was a thing. Maybe the storyline wasn't as pronounced as like other types of things. And maybe we forgot the stories of it. Maybe we forgot something.
There's something
about it, but we recognize it. And you don't need Wikipedia, you don't need glossaries of like why or how it is. You just know that there's something there. And then the third type of sacred space is the one that I'm most interested in as a person now, like a modern Indigenous person. The third type of sacred space is the one that Vine Deloria talks about, is the one that is yet to be defined.
Wow.
He said that sacred space is the thing that, for whatever reason, that the people moved towards a thing. They created a space, they made a thing, and they put so much emphasis in like trying to connect back to that land, to the things that are there that make it sacred. Right?
Is the sacredness, does it come from the willingness to not have to define what it is?
I think the sacredness is like this place here. If you look at it like in the most superficial way, you're like, we're in somebody's backyard, right? You're in somebody's backyard. It's a property. It's a thing. You've created a space where you're like, we're going to pray here. There's wood there. There's a fireplace here. There's like an altar here. There's some real minimal things here. But even in this small capacity, it's not the same size as the mountain per se, or a pyramid or a temple or a church, right? But this place that we use, how we use it, when we use it, becomes a sacred space, right? Over there on the other side of the mountain, we have our Sundance and our ceremonial grounds, these things over there. Before you take that area and you pick up a shovel and you clear some weeds and rocks, you're like, we're going to recognize that this place is going to be a new place for us. It's a new beginning for us. And so therefore, a lot of emphasis gets put into the development of a new sacred space.
There's an intention.
Yeah, the intent. And how you want to carry it. How you want to like hold it. Like, what do you do with it? And can they see it? Can they feel it? Can they embrace it? And can they carry that thing on? And that's, I think, where we are in our space. And I think that type of sacred space for us has to exist because we grow up on reservations and we're using our current space now for our belief systems, our life ways, it has to hold true because we're limited now in our expansion of where we would have gone in a place that was maybe what our ancestors would have done. It's like we didn't have lines, you didn't have boundaries, you didn't have property, you didn't have real estate, you didn't have that. You're just like, I don't know, the people moved in the land and like wherever they were, that's kind of what was defined for them. But because our acreages of our reservation borders now make it that way for us. So now it has to be.
Physical components and the setting are very, very different.
For sure.
I wonder, your native meditation, it is already done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I revisit that every day.
Yeah.
And I wonder, the sacredness, for me, it's my willingness to acknowledge that the source is timeless. And
For
yet,
sure.
here we are in a moment in the physical place with the physical elements just opening to the timeless. And so the sacredness is already present and its purpose already taking on meaning.
For sure. For sure. And the timelessness of it, right? Because time and life experiences have a lot to do with how you're going to carry something.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to carry it, right? How do you carry it? And like, it's the range of that experience that gives something life, right? Like last night, the conversation was kind of centered around this idea of compassion, right?
Right.
And it's like, I was thinking about this and I'm trying to think about it in like a very real way.
Yes.
If I'm a monk in a mountain, if I'm living in a time in the world where I have a belief system that's like timeless, that I'm just kind of carrying some kind of ideology that goes so far back where I'm saying, hey, you know, I want to talk about compassion or empathy or whatever that is, but from a pre-existing framework and carry it to now, then it's like there's this big giant concept that I'm trying to live with. And that thing is so big. But I look at my life and I'm like, hey, how I live my life compared to this big giant thing that I'm trying to attach myself to, then in some places there's going to be holes. There's going to be gaps because I myself might not think that I'm living up to the ideas that there's this big thing that I can't sometimes comprehend or I can't maybe live up to. Because if I think about myself that way, I'm like, I'm not a monk in a cave, right? It's easier for me if I was like a monk in a cave and like I didn't have a wife and I didn't have a job and I didn't pay a bill and I didn't have like this modern existence. Then I could just sit there as a monk and I could be like, hey, you know what? Compassion's like all that matters because I meditated like 24 hours a day and I didn't need food. I didn't need companionship. I didn't need life experiences. So if you live a certain type of life, the world to you looks different. Now, if you're living in a modern world and you're out in the world and like you have an ex-husband, an ex-wife, there's things right there, right? So you have like jobs that maybe you don't like and there's experiences that you have, chaos, carnage, like life, you know, taxes, whatever that is, right? And you have that. And at the same time, you're trying to say, hey, look, I want to have compassion, but I also have a life that has been hard too. So somebody's like, hey, can you have compassion for like a stranger on the street? I'm like, absolutely. I drive by them every day. I see it. Mm-hmm. But throw another variable in front of you. Mm-hmm. I got to have compassion for like an enemy or somebody who like murdered my brother. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want me to pull that thing up, that framework, and I'm supposed to like have that right now. And sometimes I don't. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and you could be a very spiritual person. Yeah. But at the same time, when life that you know it drops in front of you, what degree of compassion do you have when there's such tragedy that like the fine line between I have compassion on one hand and I have like vengeance on the other. Yeah. And those things are like competing kind of feelings because if I pull myself away from my own life and just try to like explain to you why one thing is really like a prolific part of my identity, but the other thing can just as well be a pivotal part of it. It's in there. It's in the stew. It's in there. It's in the soup. It's in the soup, right? It's a key ingredient to how any of this even started, right? Because compassion in some instances becomes very pivotal when you're in a resting place. It's easy for me after the smoke is settled, after the dust is settled, after I've had time to heal and roll around in it, I can have compassion now because I have understanding of how I got here. But when you're in the visceral experience of humanity, loss, somebody just died, something just happened, something like you were just in this place where your internal system, your whole nervous system is in shambles. Compassion might not be the thing I'm like running to right now. I can't comprehend it.
Yeah, there was a Rinpoche from Tibet that would come every year and talk. And his history was incarceration by the Chinese, and he was tortured and tortured and tortured. He had scars all over from the torture.
Yeah.
And he said he knew he lost his humanity when he could no longer keep his compassion for the person that was torturing him. That was his level of self-judgment upon where he stood vibrationally and how he stood in the world as a human being.
For sure. And that's why, like, sometimes in our communities, the hardest thing to do is often find some type of moment to rejoice kind of in the pain. Because, like, the suffering is every day, but the pain of what you've experienced, it reminds you that regardless of whatever your views are in your belief systems, your faith, it's also shaped by the torment that you're undergoing when certain things become prevalent. And in that awareness of your pain and struggle, it creates a greater depth, right?
And it brings you to the fire.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, what are you doing, right? Because I think sometimes in some belief systems, you're like, if I feel bad today, I can atone and I can say a couple blessings and I just keep going on. Or if I'm the offender in the world, I can say a couple prayers and a couple like...
I can harden my heart.
Yeah, I can do a couple things and I can keep moving. But I think in this kind of dynamic, for these belief systems that we're operating in right now, we have a fire going, we're going to pray, we're going to like use the day, right? Because if it was, let's just say, for example, if it was like June 1st, right? If it was June 1st, the sun's out, you're looking at the world, nature kind of is like shaping you because you're like, I like the warmth. It's a beautiful, hot, sunny summer day and all is well in the world. But we're in January 1st, and for us in our community here exclusively, this day, it's a demarcation point for our community here that has shaped us.
Yes.
This day has shaped us because this day signifies a death of a young person that changed the periphery of our culture. It changed a generation of people in our community.
You all full circle, didn't it?
Yeah, full circle, right? Yeah, to our knees. So when I look at that mountain, going back to sacred spaces, right, I say that giant mountain over there has a sacred distinction. And I look at the smaller mountain that's like right below it. You can see it. There's like a black mountain right there.
Yes.
So the big mountain culturally is significant to our culture in a big, big way. That smaller mountain, the one right below it, that's the mountain where my father took his own life, right? So my father took his life right there. Now, if I come right here and you look even closer right here, I'm right here looking at it. Less than 100 yards away, there's a little street light right there. That's where my brother lost his life. So my brother was killed right here. So I have a fireplace right here where we're praying, and less than 100 yards away, I can see where my brother lost his life. So the distinction of closeness, proximity, and sacred space is like this. There's like 3 levels of it. Now, if you don't know that story, and you're just like a person who came in from the outside, they're here like, this is cool, man. I got a fire, I got a sacred space. It's kind of cool what you did here. But the story is much more developed, and it's more incremental to the culture when you can learn about how integral those spaces and steps have been into the development of where we are now 26 years later. And that's what makes what we do here today in our communities very unique, because I couldn't write that. right?
Yeah.
I couldn't write that story, right? That's when people are saying like reality is like stranger than fiction, right? Because I'm
It's all
looking
in
at
a
that.
line.
It's an alignment.
Yeah.
There's an alignment here. And however you want to look at that alignment, right? Somebody could just say, oh, that's a really interesting circumstance. Like this is happenstance, right?
Mm.
But then I look at it and say to myself, how is that possible that my life cycle as like an Indigenous person here is in such alignment
It's like
to these
that
things?
is from the mountain to the other mountain to the building to the fire. It's like the whole thing
It was like supposed to be.
is breathing you.
Yeah,
And you're
The
breathing.
neighbor.
It's coming back into you, and every breath is new, and you're releasing something else into the fire and back all the way to the far
and
mountain.
for sure. And so now, if you think about it in the sense of time, right?
Mm.
If you think about it almost in the sense of like evolution, right? If it's a spiritual evolution on one hand, you have the evolution of whatever happened to get here. But you know what happens when I go there? Because our
right.
our Sundance is like right here.
Yes.
It's also an alignment
Yes.
from here to here. But I look at that not as spiritual evolution. I look at that as spiritual self-determination. Because I don't think evolution is one of these things where you're kind of forced into adaptation, but I think that is a determination. So
Because
we've
there's
determined
so much,
something else.
Pain that is willingly surrendered to there,
For sure.
that is very connected to everything
Everything
that's
else.
lined.
It's a perfect line that goes from here to there. And then in that, the determination of which I'm speaking is you've now determined in yourself with a collective of people in generations to say, we're going to use this momentum of our storyline, of our history, of our past, of our identities, and we're going to use this energy for something else.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done over there in this space, right? So everything is just kind of happening in segments, and so there's a timeline, there's a storyline, there's a purpose. And so
Yes.
what happens over there has changed generations again.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it's a really unique derivative of what people have done and can do with their existence.
It's so beautiful that it's a physicalization of what's more real than the physical.
For sure.
And here it is.
To me, there's no coincidences that the Southwest is almost like on that axis. In the South, we have the Good Red Road.
Mm-hmm.
In the West, we have that dark place of looking within, on introspection, going into our sunset. And I'm just seeing this as an opportunity to go deeper and deeper on the Good Red Road into that self-awareness, acknowledging the knowledge of
Oh,
itself.
for sure. And I would also take it a step further, right? And say that when we're thinking about this idea of creating sacred space or looking at something, if a person looks at their life, right? And you look at faith and whatever that means to a person, what did you do to create something, make something? What did you do with that degree of suffering and pain and whatever was withheld in the past that didn't make it here? We are in a state of, it's not suspended animation in the sense that we didn't do anything with it. It's more or less that we've taken that moment of inconvenience and struggle and we've planted seeds because we had to, right? Like the people had to live, the community had to live, something had to live. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, that we didn't know when we were planting these seeds what was going to grow from that. We just thought about like the immediate, superficial kind of like trauma response, right, to what happened in that moment. It's like the first thing you do is put out the fire,
Yeah.
right? And you put out a fire because the house is burning.
Yeah.
And now you got to put out the fire. And so after that moment kind of occurs, then the rest of it, you're like, okay, now we have to like do something. Now, when we're young people, I was 20 years old when this occurred. I'll be 46 years old in 2 days. So within 26 years, right, we've seen so much incremental change and shaping of our culture. Like I can look at this place now because I was here 26 years ago, and I can tell you what kind of blood has been put in the dirt, what kind of emphasis has been put in, just to try to get us to a place where we can articulate what has happened.
What you're able to witness.
While you're talking, I'm looking at how many buffalo skulls are here. Maybe 15, 20 buffalo skulls. And they're in progression. On the far side, all the fur is off. They've been sunbathed, and they look like what I normally see on an altar.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me is shocked to look in the first row to see that some of those skulls have fur, and you can even see the head of the buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
To me, listening to what you're saying, I feel the buffalo transition from walking, dying, and spending time in the sun. And the sun is doing something there in the physical, what I'm seeing. It's changing.
It is changing, and I think it's like you will see life experiences change a person, right? And when you have great loss and you have like great victory, those things, they coalesce in a way that it makes what you're looking at tolerable. It makes certain aspects of life very tolerable. And when I use the word tolerable, it's because there's a lot of circumstances that people enter into where life doesn't feel like that,
No.
right? And that's why even like last night, and I was kind of mentioning this when we were at the event, and it was like, and I wasn't trying to be disrespectful to the moment, but it's like there's something really conflicting in a real natural way, and it's okay that it is that way, right?
Because you're human.
Because you're human, and it's like, hey, I know that the theme is I'm supposed to have compassion, and there's like this openness in my heart that I'm supposed to hold for every kind of thing, and I'm supposed to be the better person to like be a representative of like a beautiful feeling. But if I look at the totality of life in pain and suffering and structure and like things that have also happened, sure, like
It's there.
it's there.
Yeah.
Like there's very visceral moments in a person's life that you're like, you know how many people we've buried, you know how many things that have happened, and that's why I was kind of also like using that comical moment. I was talking about like a baby, where I'm like, if I just looked at like a baby, or I looked at like a little baby, and I thought to myself, I want to have compassion for like this little baby that's like in front of me. It's easier for me from time to time to look at a child that just needs to be fed and cared for, and have compassion and love for this thing that has done nothing to me.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
like if I look at like a little baby, I'm like,
That's
hey,
easy.
that's easy.
Yeah.
And so when you get lost in the transition of life, you may not have compassion for
someone
another
who kicks you when you're down.
For sure. Like I've been kicked in the ground when like something else has happened.
Yeah.
And it's hard to go from a place where there's this sense of unfairness, inequity, inequality, torture, and mayhem, versus I'm looking at a child and I can set aside my own life experiences and go directly to the child and let nature take over and say, as an adult, I have to feed this child, and this child didn't ask for whatever it asked for. I just need to step in and do my job as a human and give life. And that's a lot easier
It's a lot
to
easier.
say, I want to have compassion for something that's like a child, and like just feed the child and take care of the child. And when I tell the child like, hey, like don't play with the fire, or like eat your vegetables, like that can come from like a place of care.
Yeah.
And in my mind, this is all subjective. I can give life to something that I believe deserves life. Now, if I do that to another person who kicked me when I was down, could I have compassion for the person that murdered my brother?
Right. Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, these are very real conflicting things, because I'm not a monk in a cave. Like, I don't have an existence in my culture where I'm so separated from a life experience that allows me only solely to see subject matter like in a vacuum. Like I don't have that, because my culture and my ancestors may have lived a life that I didn't live, so I can look at them in a pristine way and carry their message in a pristine way. But I also understand that there's many things in my life and about my identity and about who I am as a person that I wouldn't even deem as pristine. Not even
Well,
close.
of course not. None of us could.
But some people do.
If we're honest.
But some people do.
Well,
and that's why I think the struggle
because
is.
the layers, they only go down to a pretty shallow layer, but if they kept going deep.
To paint the picture that way, that we're better than that. Oh yeah, we're better than that. But behind closed doors, all
The
the hate and
separation.
animosity comes out. And by golly, it's tough to get on top of that one.
Yeah.
So, but in a way of looking at it that I've felt true for many decades is, if I hold hate for anybody in my heart, even though I swear I'm in the deepest love, most profound love of my life, but if I hold hate for anybody in that moment, I hold hate at a certain degree, a certain level for everybody, because it's part of my nature. It's part of who I am. It's part of what I know. It's part of my experience.
Well, I think that there's like a nature, right? And I think that that's what our culture here, because we have a belief system and a life way that's aligned with nature. And I have to look at nature and say, okay, well, what does nature do if you don't
What does
take care of
nature-
it? You know what nature does? If you don't take care of it, it will consume you, right? So nature will eat you. Nature doesn't care that you float around and think everything's everything. You go out there and try to like, you know, you go out there and don't care for it, it will consume you. Nature will consume you. The mountain lion will come down and eat you, right?
Right.
It doesn't care that you believe in a thing or don't believe in a thing. If you go into that place, it just is going to do what it does. And so we know that level of existence with nature is like whatever the human is having in their experience, and also whatever nature is doing, right? And so our belief systems they're in alignment with that process, and it has to be for us, right? Because we're of it. So because we are animals, we're just another animal in that space that we have to like recognize that there are other things happening. Because
Well, that's the big
it.
part right there, because if you were just an animal, that would be one thing, but there is an awareness of something more to where you can say, it's a good day to die. Because there's a willingness to create a sacred spaciousness out of any space. And it just so happens that, like in this instance, with that willingness, because to not have the alignment is worse than death.
For sure, in some degree, right? Because, like, if you had a belief system or a culture maybe that was like, hey, look, in order for me to be in alignment and for me to live in a way that is, I suppose, maybe true to that belief, then you have to be in nature if your belief system is of nature. So if we have a belief system that is based upon the aspects of nature, then you need to be with nature.
Yeah.
And you realize how hard it is to be with nature. So like that's why a lot of times for us in our cultures, our dances are out in the mountains and we're by the fire or by the water. We're by this thing that is the premier essence of our existence. Now, if you have a belief system where you're like, my belief system is that I have to have a beautiful monastery and I have to have a beautiful mosque and I have to build and shape things and create things and I have to have architecture that does it, then your core practice is building those things, right? But this belief system from where we live in the world, it's almost like the absence of a footprint is the most important thing. So the absence of a footprint of creating and building and like bulldozing down the land to build a thing is somewhat contrary to what we would have normally done. So that's why when people came onto this land 500 years ago and started kind of colonizing and like saying, well, let's just rip down these things, let's build this mountain and we'll build a building on it. The people are
The very act
the
of
very
that
act
was
of that
sacrilege.
was, yeah, for sure, because it goes against the tenets of like what we would have done. So when they looked at it and said, nobody's even living here. Well, that was the point. The point was that we didn't feel the need to destroy and extract and demolish nature.
If you wanted to frame it in terms of worship, your means of worship was to not have a footprint there.
Yeah, to not have a footprint.
Yes.
Right? To not have a footprint, to like walk on the land and not destroy it or not to maim it or to disfigure that.
And this is the way
was-
of honoring
For
the
sure.
Creator.
That was it. The way of honoring the Creator was to be that way, right? So if you look at the human body, right, which we know now, right, you look at it through microscopes and you look at like cells and you look at like, certain things within the body, right? Certain types of elements, right? Certain types of proteins or certain types of cells that like help sustain life, right? There's something within the body that's always fighting to keep that homeostasis moving. That's how our function is believed to be on the earth. That we are just like, as these indigenous people are moving around, our job was to always just take care of the body. This is the body. You take care of the body takes care of you. So in our belief system, if we're just like a cell that's just taking care of the body, then the more we take care of the body, the more the body takes care of us. But if you don't believe that you are to do that, you believe that the body just takes care of you, right? That you don't even think it's a body. You don't even think about it as a body. You don't even think about it as life. That's why like certain belief systems that exist in this world, what they do is they separate nature from their belief, right? So that's when they say like, nature's here for us, extraction's here for us, this is all for us. And like, that's why they don't give this idea or existence of a soul or an energy to anything that's inanimate to humanity, right? So like, you're like, well, the tree has no life, the rock has no life, the water has no life, nothing has life, just we have life and we're the only thing that matter. It's easy to destroy and break and sell off and own something that doesn't.
Because it's not a part of yourself.
No, because it's not a part of you. It's separate. So like,
You just flat don't see it as any way.
well, you don't want to.
Be a part.
It's not in your interest as a landowner, a lord, as an owner, as a person who needs to extract a thing. If you don't give it a name and you don't give it a purpose, then it's easier to break apart and rip apart, right? So on this land where we are now, that's why we make the most of what we have, right? In our reservation here, we don't have a river, we don't have lakes, we don't have certain things. So it's counterintuitive to our belief as a people even now, if we say, for example, that our practices exclusively require certain types of elements or foliage that come from the water sometimes. That's just an example, right? You're like, well, you're in a desert, there's not water here. So if we had to have a structure in our belief system that says, well, we have to have X amount of things that come from this type of terrain just to exist here, then we've limited ourselves in the growth potential that we have moving forward. Because that means we're always importing something in. We're always like going in and out of a thing, which is fine to some degree, but it doesn't work in the short term if you're just trying to create sustainability.
Well, recognize what's already here in a way that honors why it's here and always asking why. So if someone says, oh, you're not doing it right, you need to have such and such a thing, the natural question is, well, why? Why do you say that?
Well, I could see why they say it. Like, I understand why they say it.
Because that's their frame.
Because their frame of reference is whatever life has taught them to be. But I would say that in the sense that we could have a discussion about like evolution, right? It's like whatever evolves in that space, it determines like what can exist and what can't exist. So if you take a people and you take somebody who like, I guess lives in Alaska, right? You're like, I live in the tundra, and you're like,
because it's true for them there.
because it's true for them, right? Because you do what you have to do when you live in the snow and the ice. Now, if you live in like the desert, like in the Sonoran Desert, you do what you have to do in the Sonoran Desert. Or if you live by the Great Lakes, it's the same thing, right? Like whatever you have access to and your land will allow you to do is what shapes your culture and your beliefs. So I could empathize with the fact that if they believe that what it is for them and their worldview and their environment is true and actual for them there, then I would agree with that. But I would say you take those people from their initial space and you drop them here.
Which is what you're doing with people in Honduras, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's why like when we go there, we have to always go into a space where we're trying to be as extremely mindful of the fact that when we're helping external communities, in other indigenous spaces, our job is to always go in with this idea that our purpose is never to be the colonizers of other people in other spaces.
Exactly. And the beauty is when we see Spirit, the Source, Creator, expressing all these facets of what's real and true in different places, different ways, and they're all really together. They're all woven together. Somehow seeing that, it's kind of like finding a distant cousin who looks different than you. Dress is different.
And like I said, some people are better prepared for that expression, right? Some people are better prepared to want to see themselves and other people. Some people are better prepared at having an open heart and open mind towards whatever the possibilities are of that, right? Some people aren't. Some people aren't. Like some people, like they don't have a desire to want to see anything.
Right.
They just see what they see. You know? And
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. That is the tragedy of our time.
Well, I mean, you see it in all aspects, right? Because the human condition, right? It doesn't always mean that we want to see ourselves in other people.
Right.
Like we're like,
Well,
They're
that's
not-
scary.
they're not-
There's no control in that
No.
whatsoever.
no. And there's kind of pros and cons to those experiences as well, right? Like as to why people do what they do and how they do what they do. And I think in this experience we're having here on the Hunger Valley Indian Reservation in, you know, the end of 2025, I would say this, that this moment right now, probably the best way I could define like what we're doing in this place, and I'm just kind of pulling from like the pre-COVID days, this is a variant of what Native spirituality has become for us over the last like 2+ decades, right? Because if you drop certain elements in the ground, you plant certain seeds in the ground, and you water it and you care for it and you look at it, something grows from the land. And because what I've come to learn in 26 years of doing this work is that there's 3 elements that really define if a thing can survive spiritually in a community. One is, what does the land want? What do the people want? And what does the spirit want? And if you can address those 3 things, then you'll have something. But if those 3 things aren't solidified and they're not taken into a consideration and they're not acted upon, then nothing gets to exist.
What if the people realize they're so thirsty that all they want is what spirit wants, knowing that Creator created the land? Is that too airy-fairy?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's 3 elements here. Now that
So you need to fully embrace your human
exactly.
physical.
So if you just solely relied on what you believe spirit wanted, then that doesn't account for the people and the land. And that sustainability only goes as far as your longevity. It only goes as far as your mind and what you believe. Now, when you get old and
So
die,
what you're saying
it
is
doesn't carry
there's
on.
3 distinctions. There's no separation between the 3 distinctions, but they're distinct.
Well, it's the same thing as a body, right?
Right,
So when you
one
think
body.
about one body, right? Because you have blood and you have flesh and you have bones.
Right.
But you can have a body that doesn't have life. You can have a dead body.
Yeah.
But if you want a live body, then there's the flesh, the meat, and the bones, and actual life.
They all have to be
And it all has
healthy.
to be healthy and it has to be alive. And so what I'm saying is a collective's idea of a thing in spirit, you may have a combination of like the spirit and maybe the people, but if you don't have the land to attach it to, then again, it's not grounded in anything. You may have the ground, the land may want something, but the people don't want it.
Right.
So then you don't have people to cultivate the land and take it and develop it and build it. So that's why I said I've learned that these 3 things are vital in the discovery of what could be.
As a non-native person, I feel like the time is very ripe for what you're saying to enter into all the systems that be in the culture, because it's so sick right now. I find that myself personally, before I had an understanding of land, for instance, I would find that if I really needed to have peace and connect with spirit, I had to get on my face and put my cheek on the ground. That's the point for me personally where I felt a connection. And so that's how I translate personally what you're saying for the land, is that unless you're willing to be on the ground, to be on the land, and to start learning and knowing and have a relationship, we can kind of talk and our brain can say things, but it's not real for us.
But remember, like what I'm talking about and these distinctions come solely from the fact that I've been developing something with my family and community for 26 years. So like my lens is as a person who's like impact driven. Do you see
I
what I'm
know
saying?
you-
So
yeah.
like in the impact, it's like, well, why did we do what we do? And now I can look at it and say, I wasn't making things beautiful. I was like cutting a road. So my job was never to like make things beautiful. My job was never to like define certain things. My job was to open a pathway so that way something can exist. So it would almost be like if I was in the first phase of development, it's like I just took a shovel and a rake and scraped away the land and planted a seed, but I don't know what came. And so 26 years later, other people came and they're like, hey, I think we should put a bench here or something. Like other people started to like really shape that part, because what I'm saying is like, you know, from an impact position, it's more or less that some people, they don't in their minds think about the culture like that. They're solely just like, I just want to be by the fire and I just want to like smell the smoke and I just want to say some prayers and I want to go home. Maybe they're never going to be those people who are thinking holistically about what all that means and the totality of effort that goes into the development of something. They're not thinking about leadership like that. They're not thinking about sustainability like that. They're not thinking about real estate like that or political things that have to happen in the communities like that. They're not burdening themselves with all of the elements that
It's
a
more of a
person.
self-seeking thing.
But there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like how people function. But what I'm saying is like some people will really entertain what does that mean to develop something that is far greater and more sustainable and that has a generational impact of the development of a third type of sacred space.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's what you started out with.
And that's what
the
you
third
started
type
with.
of-
Yes.
Can I share a real story
Please.
that happened here? So I don't remember when this was. Do you remember when we brought many years ago a woman here named Donna? It's kind of long blondish hair.
Maybe.
So she had never been to lodge.
Yeah.
She came as a prison chaplain, pastor kind of a person who was just open. And I remember being in lodge and she was asking you questions. Oh, why do you do this? Oh, what does this mean? You know, and she was not trying to feed her head knowledge, but she was just genuinely curious. It was a meaningful experience for her, and we didn't take a before and after questionnaire or anything like that. You know, she just had that experience. And I haven't been in close touch with her over the years, just occasional. So I just touched base with her in a meaningful way a couple of weeks ago. She came to mine, I touched base, we connected, and she came to a Zoom thing that I was doing. And she said, do you remember when I went to Brian's lodge? That stirred something up in me. Her roots are in Ireland, Scotland. So she said it made her hungry for her own roots. And so she's over there now, actively seeking out her roots in a way that is real on the land that was the land where she came from, and connecting with Indigenous people there and ceremonies and whatnot. And it's something that she didn't see herself as like, oh, I'm part of this particular community, but something here threw off a spark in her that created a little fire. And now she's over there finding her community.
And that's good. I think, you know, for anybody, you know, if I had advice for anybody, it's like wherever you are on the land, take care of it.
Yeah.
Wherever you are on the land, take care of it. That's all there is, right? And so it's really just doing whatever you believe you need to do to try to find some kind of solace or, you know, understanding of your existence on this place, right?
Yeah, and it is
so-
very connected to where you are.
And it can be. And I think like a lot of times like the fatal flaw, in my opinion, when it comes to people who just kind of drop in and never come around again, it's not like a flaw because like they don't understand or don't care or have like, you know, like a disregard. I just think it's like anything that you do in life, it's like you get up and you eat every day and you drink water every day. Like there's things you do every day. These ceremonies are like that, right? When you stay by the fireplace, you do things all the time. You learn things all the time. You wouldn't
true.
just eat once, you know, once a month, you die, right? Like there's things you do that sustain your experience, and I think that that's what like these ceremonies are really beautiful for, because they're not intended to be a one
Right.
thing, like a one-time runoff fix-all thing. And it's like the river, right? When they say like you don't step into the river in the same place twice, it's the same experience. And so
Yeah,
there
and yet
are
it's like
differences.
coming home. Like, you know, we live so far away, it's hard for us to get here as often as we wish we could. But every time we come, it feels like coming home.
And I think it can be. And I feel like that. I've been out here starting fires in the backyard like 25, 26 years. And I can tell you that every time I come here, it feels the same way.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know You know, every time my life is different. I'm in a different headspace. I'm in a different place. Like, I'm a year older. Stuff is happening. Stuff is changing. And so every time I come here and look at it, it always feels different. It never feels the same.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
how I
you-
feel with the fire. Every fire, it has its
It always
own
feels different.
beingness.
And that's the life we live in.
I'm so glad you're that way, by the way.
Yeah.
I love it that it's that way.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful life, and you just do the best you can with it, because like when all things are said and done, if I was going through a life circumstance, or I was in crisis, or I was sad, or I was mourning, or I was grieving, or I was something, being by the fire feels right to me.
Yes.
Now, if I was in that same condition and having all those same elements, being in a really like pristine building with marble floors and big glass windows, I don't know if that would make me feel anything. And I'm not saying it doesn't do that for other people.
Right.
I just know for me,
Yeah.
when I have a moment, I just need to be by the fire. So that's what I do. So I'm by the fire when I'm in pain, I'm by the fire when I'm happy, and I'm by the fire in any other time when I have life. And it's, you know, if I can be by the fire in gratitude and happiness, or in suffering, then it doesn't matter. I just know when stuff happens, that's where I choose to be.
Yes.
And that's how I choose to live my life.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
You've been listening to a fireside conversation with tribal leader Brian "BB" Melendez. You can learn more about him and his work at tribalminds.org. If this reflection on land and memory and sacred space spoke to you, you're invited into the Bowl of Light Cafe. It's a place to explore these kinds of ideas in your own life, in conversation and connection with others. You can also find resources there for expanding and deepening your wisdom. Your invitation is on my website at songrise.live. That's SONGRISE.LIVE. Thanks for listening.
The pain of what you've experienced, it reminds you that regardless of whatever your views are in your belief systems, your faith, it's also shaped by the torment that you're undergoing when certain things become prevalent. And in that awareness of your pain and struggle, it creates a greater depth, right?
And it brings you to the fire.
Yeah,